undermining the authority of the United Nations. You are a responsible member state of the United Nations, and you are setting a bad precedent, you are setting a bad example for other countries to follow. You are actually putting the peace of the entire world at stake. And you know, when I say that, it's really shocking, this Russian-Ukrainian dispute conflict. It should have been resolved through talks. It should have been resolved through dialogue. It should have been resolved through the United Nations Security Council, through the United Nations General Assembly. It has this position of the Supreme Court of the entire world for us. But why I fear that the World War II should not be repeated? We are afraid, if God forbid, unfortunately, if this war escalates into a full-scale war, that means World War III, then this time we know that nuclear weapons will also be used. And when countries have nuclear weapons, when countries have stockpiled nuclear weapons, they are bound to be used. Ultimately, they are bound to be used. Chernobyl, we know it's in Ukraine. And what happened to Chernobyl? It cost lives of people when the Chernobyl nuclear disaster happened some decades ago. And so this should be a lesson for us to learn something from. Then we also know that in Second World War, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, atom bombs were dropped. And the humanity, entire humanity, will never forget the disaster of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And you know, at that time, the atom bombs were not that sophisticated. They were not that lethal. But yet, we cannot forget the disasters of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan actually tried to become a role model for the international community, where it did not develop any nuclear weapons, keeping in view the disaster to humanity. Nuclear weapons can wipe out the entire human race from the face of Earth. Now, at that time, when that disaster happened, when the nuclear weapons were not that developed, were not that lethal, were not that sophisticated, and were not in that quantity, please consider that now many countries have stockpiled thousands of nuclear weapons. They are more lethal, far more sophisticated. So, I would request Russia, we are not against Russia, we are not taking sides of anyone, we are just speaking out for the sake of humanity. That please, immediately I would like to appeal to Russia, from my political party and from the people of Pakistan, please stop this war, immediately stop this war, do ceasefire, and save humanity. Be a role model for the entire international community, that you can resolve issues through talks, through dialogue. Please respect United Nations as a responsible member. Please utilize the authority of United Nations for the greater good and peace. Ukrainian and Russian authorities can resolve their issues on the platform of United Nations. All the countries should help them resolve this issue. And all the countries should be ready to help them resolve this issue. So United Nations platform should be used, and there should be a strong message given to the entire international community. Because if United Nations platform is weakened, for example, in the case of Kashmir, India is not respecting the resolutions of United Nations. So that is to weaken the authority of United Nations. Then, in the case of Myanmar, what's happening? They are not honoring United Nations. So if Russia also sets that bad precedent as a big country, and I always say that bigger countries have bigger responsibility. So Russia should set a positive example. It should immediately stop this war. Ukraine is an independent country. It's an independent member of the United Nations. Every country is entitled to its own decisions, to its own choices, to its own options. If Russia has some security concerns regarding Ukraine's becoming part or joining NATO, then that issue can be amicably resolved. That issue can be resolved in a peaceful way through the United Nations, I repeat. And